What's going on, everyone? So, according to Stephen A. Smith, the Los Angeles Lakers have one glaring need right now. They need a legitimate 3-and-D wing. And yes, he mentioned Andrew Wiggins as the name that's been floating around as the main target. But Stephen A. was quick to point out that as of now, that doesn't really look like it's going to happen. Still, he reminded us, in this league, you never know. Things can change fast, and a deal can come out of nowhere. But then, Stephen A. shifted the conversation to someone else, a player he feels could be the perfect option for this Lakers roster, Miles Bridges. Stephen A. said flat out, Bridges might be the most ideal fit the Lakers could hope for. Why? Because he checks every single box. He's big, physical, versatile, athletic, and he can defend 1 through 5. Not many guys in the league can say that. On top of that, he's only 27, just turned, and won't even hit 28 until March. In Stephen A.'s words, this is the type of player who fits what the Lakers need both now and moving forward. He explained that Bridges can slot right into either forward spot. This season, you could play him at the 3. If down the road LeBron retires or the roster shifts, you can slide Bridges down to the 4. And if somehow the Lakers landed a superstar like Giannis in the future, you could still keep Bridges at the 3 without any issue. That's the kind of flexibility that championship teams thrive on. Stephen A. also made it clear that the Hornets' situation opens the door for this kind of move. Charlotte's young core is developing, and at some point, they're going to have to decide whether keeping Bridges makes sense for their timeline. He believes that decision could come sooner rather than later, and if the Hornets reach that point, the Lakers need to be ready to strike. Now, some reports out there have linked the Lakers to other names, like Josh Green. Stephen A. didn't dismiss that, but he was clear. If it's between Bridges and anyone else, Bridges is the guy. He gives you everything Wiggins gives you, plus more. He can create his own shot, create for others, rebound, score in bunches, and still be a defensive anchor. And here's the kicker. His contract is cheaper. He's making just $7 million this year and $22. $8 million next year, which is almost $8 million less than Wiggins will cost. For a team like the Lakers, that financial flexibility matters. Stephen A. tied it all together by pointing out how Bridges also lines up perfectly with the Lakers' long-term plan. The front office wants to maintain cap space flexibility for 2027, and Bridges' deal fits right into that window. He's not a long-term financial burden, but he's an immediate impact player. That combination is rare. So while fans may still dream about other names, Stephen A. made it crystal clear. If the Lakers want to maximize this window with LeBron and Anthony Davis, while also protecting their future, Miles Bridges is the guy they should be targeting. Stephen A. made it very clear that he's not acting as some insider breaking news. He stressed that what he's doing is evaluating situations, looking at roster, and identifying where certain players fit best. He even mentioned how people online often label him as the worst insider ever, and his response is simple. He's not trying to be one. What he's providing is analysis, perspective, and sometimes projections based on logic. And history shows he's been right before. He pointed back to the Rui Hachimura and D'Angelo Russell moves as prime examples. At the time, there wasn't much noise around those players being available, but Stephen A. looked at the circumstances, at their teams, and said it was in their best interest to move them. Shortly after, the Lakers swooped in, and both deals happened. He contrasted that with the Zach LaVine situation. That wasn't speculation or guesswork. Everyone knew he was available. Everyone knew the Lakers had some level of interest. But the Miles Bridges scenario, in Stephen A.'s view, is much more like Rui and D'Lo. There isn't any real buzz right now about Charlotte actively shopping him, but when you analyze the Hornets roster, the direction of their rebuild, and the amount of wings they've got piled up, it becomes logical that Bridges could be a piece they eventually move. That's why Stephen A. said, if the Lakers are truly considering selling the farm for someone like Andrew Wiggins, they'd be better off aiming for Miles Bridges. In his eyes, Bridges is simply the better fit. Smith broke it down further. At 6'7", 6'8", Bridges can play either forward spot, offering versatility the Lakers desperately need. He's younger, he's cheaper, and he brings virtually the same skill set, if not more upside, than Wiggins. And then there's the financial element. Stephen A. reminded everyone that Bridges makes just over $20 million next season, while Wiggins is far more expensive, and the Lakers are carefully managing their books with 2027 cap space in mind. Bridges, in other words, fits perfectly into both the short-term and long-term strategy. Now, he didn't paint it as something that would happen tomorrow. Stephen A. was clear that if a trade for Bridges ever goes down, it's much more likely around the trade deadline rather than this offseason. Charlotte, in his opinion, will want to evaluate its roster first, figure out which young players rise, who deserves more minutes, and what direction they want to commit to. That patience makes sense. But if the Hornets reach the point where they're open to moving Bridges, Stephen A. believes the Lakers have the contracts and flexibility to make it happen. And he didn't stop there. Smith went even further, saying that the Lakers should not just have tunnel vision on one player, but instead keep their eyes wide open on the full range of opportunity. He entertained the idea of Los Angeles potentially targeting multiple pieces from Charlotte's roster, not just Miles Bridges. Trey Mann and Josh Green were two names he specifically highlighted as realistic gets, and he explained why. According to Stephen A., both of those players bring skill sets that fill glaring gaps in the Lakers' current construction. Mann is a young guard with creativity off the dribble, someone who can inject pace and energy into second unit. Green, on the other hand, is a proven 3-and-D wing, exactly the type of player you need when you're building around stars like LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Luka Doncic. What stood out most was the source of the buzz. Smith reminded his audience that some of the reports about Josh Green aren't even coming from Los Angeles insiders trying to stir up Lakers hype. No, these are Charlotte-based voices floating the Lakers as a potential trade partner, which gives the conversation legitimacy. When you have people close to the Hornets themselves acknowledging that such deals make sense, it turns speculation into something that feels grounded in basketball logic rather than fantasy talk. Stephen A. underscored the practicality of the idea. He said, "This isn't about star chasing or dreaming big for the sake of headline. It's about roster balance, financial flexibility, and maximizing the window that LeBron and AD still provide. Adding Bridges, Mann, or Green, or even some combination of them, would immediately give Darvin Ham new tools to deploy in high-pressure playoff situations. Depth, versatility, and reliable role players are often what separate teams that flame out early from teams that contend for championships." At the end of the day, his position was clear. Miles Bridges might not be the obvious headline name plastered across every rumor mill right now, but when you connect the dots, he could be exactly the kind of player who changes the trajectory of the Lakers' season. And as Stephen A. reminded viewers, sometimes it's not the blockbuster trades everyone talks about nonstop that end up defining a team's success. It's the moves that fly under the radar at first, the deals that seem quiet or secondary, that later reveal themselves to be the ones that reshape a contender's path and decide who's standing in June. Stephen A. didn't shy away from addressing the financial side of things either, because in his eyes, everything in today's NBA comes down to two questions: can you play, and what's the cost? He said straight up, if Charlotte comes to the table asking for 5 first-round picks, then forget it. The Lakers should walk away immediately. But if the conversation is more about shedding Bridges' contract and simply asking for a first-rounder plus some matching pieces, then that's the type of deal Los Angeles has to explore. Stephen A. even went as far as saying that, personally, he'd have no problem attaching a first-round pick to make a deal for Bridges happen, because the value lines up. He broke down some possible trade scenarios, noting that the Lakers have multiple ways to structure something, whether it's Rui Hachimura and draft capital, or a package that involves Gabe Vincent, Max Christie, or even expanding to a 3-team trade, where Charlotte gets a big man back in return. According to Stephen A., the beauty of the Lakers' current roster is flexibility. They have movable salaries, they have options, and that makes a pursuit of Bridges realistic if the Hornets reached that decision point. Then came the numbers. Stephen A. dove into the stat line to show exactly why he believes Bridges is worth that kind of gamble. Last season, Bridges started all 64 games he played, logging over 31 minutes per night. He averaged more than 20 points per game, along with nearly 8 rebounds, 4 assists, plus solid defensive contributions with steals and blocks. The three-point shooting percentage, at just over 31%, wasn't pretty. But Stephen A. emphasized context. He reminded viewers that in Charlotte, Bridges has often been forced to carry an offensive load, far beyond what his natural role should be. Injuries to teammates like LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller left Bridges as the primary scorer, taking difficult, contested shots, and still managing to keep his production steady. And that's where Stephen A. brought it back to the Lakers. He argued that if Bridges were placed in Los Angeles, surrounded by LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Luka Doncic, the quality of his looks would completely change. Instead of step-back threes with defenders draped over him, he'd get spot-up catch-and-shoot opportunities, open driving lanes, and chances to attack closeouts. In that environment, Stephen A. believes Bridges could rediscover the efficiency he showed in past seasons, including years where he shot close to 40% from deep. Beyond scoring, Stephen A. highlighted Bridges' rebounding as a massive plus. Averaging over 7 rebounds per game from the wing is no small thing. And for a Lakers team that often leans heavily on Davis to clean the glass, having another consistent rebounder on the perimeter would be invaluable. Add in his versatility on defense, the ability to guard multiple positions, and Stephen A. described Bridges as the definition of a modern-day forward built for playoff basketball. In the end, Stephen A. circled back to the central question: availability. He admitted that there's no concrete word right now that Charlotte is actively shopping Bridges, but he made it clear that situations like these develop quietly before they break open. And the Lakers need to be prepared if the window opens. To him, Miles Bridges is exactly the kind of acquisition that doesn't just add depth, it raises a team's ceiling. So while fans may debate whether Los Angeles should chase Andrew Wiggins, Zach LaVine, or other rumored names, Stephen A. said the smart money might actually be on Bridges, because if he hits the market at the right price, he could be the difference maker that takes the Lakers from being competitive to being a legitimate threat to win the West.